The snow began falling before dawn, soft at first, like hesitant footsteps across the quiet town, then heavier, thicker, until the whole valley lay buried under a white silence that only Christmas seemed capable of creating. Lanterns glowed faintly along the wooden street of Pine Hollow, their yellow light trembling in the cold air, reflecting off frost-covered shop windows, and the breath of townsfolk who moved briskly, collars pulled high. Christmas Eve had arrived, but for many joy came wrapped in warmth and company. For others it came disguised as endurance. Maylin stood at the edge of the town square, hands folded tightly inside the sleeves of her worn wool coat, her breath shallow as she stared at the small wicker basket resting on the auction table. It was modest, carefully prepared, red cloth lining, hand-baked mooncakes infused with orange peel, dried persimmons tied with twine, a small carved wooden horse, and a handwritten card in neat, delicate strokes wishing peace and blessings for the winter season. It had taken her 3 weeks to assemble, every item chosen with care, every coin spent with painful calculation. This basket was not just a Christmas offering, it was her hope, her rent, her survival. Maylin was known in Pine Hollow, but not truly seen. She had arrived 3 winters ago with her husband, Wei, a quiet man who worked harder than he spoke. He had been hired at the lumber mill beyond the ridge, and for a short while, life had been steady. They rented a small cabin near the creek, planted vegetables in spring, and saved for the future. But the mountain does not bargain with plans. One night, during a late snowfall, a timber slide crushed part of the mill. Wei never came home. The town sent condolences, a folded flag, and a thin envelope of compensation that vanished within months. What remained was Maylin, a widow in a land that did not know how to hold her grief. She took in sewing, mending coats, washing linens for families who spoke kindly to her face but rarely invited her inside. When winter came again, the work slowed, and hunger became familiar. Still, she never begged. She learned to stretch rice, to smile softly, to endure. The Christmas basket auction was the town's proud tradition. Every year, families donated baskets filled with food, crafts, and treats auctioned to raise money for winter relief. Laughter usually rang through the square, bids flying fast as men tried to outdo one another, women cheering, children darting between boots. This year, the baskets were plentiful and beautiful, ham wrapped in cloth, jars of honey, knitted scarves, smoked meats. Maylin's basket was placed last, slightly off to the side as if it did not quite belong. She had debated for days whether to enter it at all. But the sign-up fee had been waived by the church elder, and she told herself that Christmas was about miracles. The auctioneer's voice boomed cheerfully as basket after basket sold. Coins clinked, applause followed, sharp and confused. Why would Elias Carter bid on that basket? He could afford any of the others. The auctioneer hesitated, then found his voice. We have $15. Do I hear 20? Silence answered again, but this time it felt different. Elias stood unmoving, his gaze steady, his expression unreadable. No one challenged him. The auctioneer waited, then lifted his gavel. Sold, $15. The sound echoed like a bell. Maylin's breath left her in a shaky exhale. She stared at Elias, unsure what to say, her hands still hovering near the basket. He stepped forward and placed the money on the table, then gently pushed the basket toward her instead of taking it. It's yours, he said quietly. Christmas gift. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Sir, her voice faltered. She had not expected kindness to come without condition. Elias shook his head. You made it. You should keep it. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a shared understanding of loss, of long winters survived alone. The crowd watched, stunned. Some faces softened. Others looked away, uncomfortable with the mirror held before them. Maylin bowed deeply, tears finally spilling free. Thank you, she whispered, the words too small for the weight they carried. As Elias turned to leave, the snow thickened, covering the auction table, the footprints, the moment, yet somehow preserving it forever. Maylin clutched, covering the auction table, the footprints, the moment, yet somehow preserving it forever. Maylin clutched the basket to her chest, the wicker pressing into her coat, as if to remind her that this was real, that kindness had not abandoned her after all. Elias did not look back as he walked away, but his shoulders felt lighter than they had in years, as though something he did not know he had lost had quietly found its way back to him. The crowd slowly returned to its noise, but the tone had changed. Laughter sounded softer now, more careful. A few townsfolk glanced at Mei Lin with something new in their eyes. Respect, perhaps, or shame, or both. She remained where she was for a long moment, letting her breathing settle, letting the sting in her fingers fade. $15, triple the bid, enough to buy coal, rice, and maybe even a small pine branch to hang above her door, enough to survive the winter, enough to remind her that her life still had value. She carried the basket home through the falling snow, each step lighter than the last. The cabin by the creek greeted her with its familiar creaks and shadows. Inside, she lit the lamp and set the basket on the small wooden table. The room smelled faintly of wood smoke and flour. She sat down slowly, running her fingers over the red cloth, over the card she had written and now received back as if fate itself had signed it. For the first time since Wei's death, she allowed herself to cry freely, not from despair, but from release. High on the eastern ridge, Elias stood at the window. Mei Lin's fingers tightened with each sail, her eyes flicking from the table to the crowd. Some glanced at her basket briefly, curiosity fading quickly. Others avoided looking altogether. When the auctioneer finally gestured toward her offering, his tone shifted, still polite, but lacking the excitement he had given the others. "Next we have a Christmas basket prepared by Mrs. Lin," he announced. A pause followed. Snow crunched beneath boots as the crowd shifted, murmurs fluttering like restless birds. "We'll start the bidding at $5. Silence. The wind seemed to answer instead, lifting the red cloth just enough to reveal the contents. Mei Lin felt heat rush to her face. She lowered her gaze, staring at the frozen ground. $5 was already more than she had hoped for. One bid would mean rent paid for a week. Two might mean coal for the stove. The auctioneer cleared his throat. $5, he repeated, scanning the crowd. A man coughed. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve. Somewhere, laughter rang out from another stall, cruel in its contrast. "No bids?" the auctioneer asked gently. Mei Lin's chest tightened. She swallowed, forcing herself to breathe. It was foolish to expect anything else, she told herself. Her food was unfamiliar. Her name was foreign. Her grief was old news. The auctioneer waited a moment longer, then sighed softly. "All right. We'll mark this one as unsold." The word struck harder than the cold. Unsold. Unwanted. Mei Lin bowed her head, her vision blurring as snowflakes melted against her lashes. She reached forward, fingers trembling, ready to lift the basket and carry it back to her empty cabin. She had already begun calculating how many days the food might last her alone. "Wait." The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep, steady, unhurried. Conversations hushed. Mei Lin froze, unsure if she had imagined it. Boots approached, heavy and deliberate, crunching through the snow. The crowd parted instinctively as a tall figure emerged, his coat dusted white, his hat pulled low. He was not from town, or at least not often seen in it. Elias Carter rarely came down from his ranch unless he needed supplies. He lived beyond the eastern ridge, alone since his wife died years ago, known for his quiet nature and his refusal to join gatherings. Children whispered about him like a legend, part mystery, part warning. Adults nodded to him respectfully, but did not linger. Elias stepped closer to the table, his eyes moving not to the basket first, but to Mei Lin. Something in her posture, the way she stood small but unbroken, grief wrapped tightly around dignity, caught his attention. He had seen that look before. He had worn it himself. "What's the starting bid?" he asked. The auctioneer blinked, startled. $5, Mr. Carter." Elias nodded once. "I'll bid 15. A ripple of surprise spread through the crowd. Mei Lin's head snapped up, her eyes wide. $15 was triple the starting price. Whispers. Of his ranch house, watching the snow bury the land. He poured himself a cup of coffee, the steam curling upward, and stared into the darkness. He told himself he had only done what was right. And yet, something in his chest stirred, a quiet warmth he had not felt since before the long years of solitude. He did not know Mei Lin's story in full, but he knew pain when he saw it. He knew courage, and for reasons he could not yet name. He felt certain that tonight had been the beginning of something far greater than a Christmas auction. As the church bell rang in the distance, marking the hour, two lonely lives, unknown to each, other just days before, rested beneath the same falling snow, connected by a single moment of compassion. Christmas had not come with songs or crowds for them. It had come softly, in the form of a basket, a bid, and a choice to see worth where others had not. And if this story moved you even a little, if you believe that kindness still matters, that one decision can change a life, then take a moment to subscribe to the channel. These stories are not just tales. They are reminders that hope can appear when bids fall silent, and that sometimes the greatest miracles arrive through the hands of those brave enough to care.